Mr. President, on another matter entirely, Israel's military campaign against the terrorist organization Hamas has a clear-cut objective: to restore Israel's security by eliminating rockets, shut down these infiltration tunnels from which Hamas is launching its attacks against Israel, and to demilitarize Gaza. That's Israel's objective. This is clearly justified in the face of more than 2,300 rocket attacks into Israel from Gaza since early July. And I strongly support Israel's recent efforts through Operation Protective Edge to defend itself and to end the threat of additional rocket and infiltration attacks by Hamas. Operation Protective Edge also serves a larger purpose, and its resolution has broader implications for the future of the Palestinian people. If Hamas declares victory by keeping its weapons stockpiles, by continuing to undermine Israel's security, and by turning away from Egypt's efforts to forge a reasonable ceasefire, the net result will be a relative weakening of the Palestinian Authority and of those in the West Bank who have worked toward a peaceful resolution of the overall conflict. So look, I support any effort which brings this campaign to an end in a manner that increases Israel's security. That means specifically that Hamas cannot be left with a large stockpile of missiles and rockets, cannot be left with infiltration tunnels. They must be destroyed. Hamas cannot be allowed to aggressively wrest, refit, and build up weapons stockpiles. That weakens Israel and the Palestinian Authority. And here's what I oppose. I oppose any efforts by the international community, especially the United Nations, to impose a ceasefire on Israel that does not meet these military objectives and that therefore risks rewarding Hamas, actually rewarding them, for a campaign of terror, and that seeks to make additional concessions to Hamas, such as easing security along the borders of Gaza. Look, an unfavorable settlement, especially one that left the terrorist group Hamas with a stockpile of weaponry, would create incentives for Hamas to continue smuggling arms from Iran and, of course, to return to violence. An unfavorable settlement would also undermine the leadership of the Palestinian Authority, which has attempted to negotiate with Israel through peaceful means. So let's be clear here. The terror tactics employed by Hamas show contempt for human life, whether Israeli or Palestinian, by employing rockets and mortars as weapons of terror against Israel's civilian population, or using its own schools within Gaza as weapons depots. Hamas has shown a gross disregard for civilians. The Prime Minister of Israel, I thought, put it very well when he said Israel uses missile defense to protect its civilians. Hamas uses civilians to protect their missiles. There's no moral equivalency here, none whatsoever. These tactics should be loudly and widely condemned, and Israel's right to defend itself should be affirmed. As I noted last week, Secretary Hagel wrote to the majority leader seeking urgent funding for components of the Iron Dome missile defense system. I and others support this request, as Iron Dome has afforded Israel some real protection from these indiscriminate rockets. This morning, some of my colleagues will further explain the importance of Iron Dome and the need for Israeli defense forces to press on, to finish the job in destroying the infiltration tunnels and weapons stockpiles. Republicans are united in our support of Israel's defense, and this morning my colleagues will explain our opposition to any effort to force a ceasefire on Israel that does not further its security objectives. In a situation like this, Mr. President, Israel only has one dependable friend. The United States should not be trying to pressure Israel to make a bad deal that leaves Hamas in a position to continue these attacks against Israeli civilians. Now, no one has been more active on this issue than my colleague from South Carolina, and I see him on the floor now, and therefore I yield the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President.